so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take about a minute and a half to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm sincerely passionate about promoting is Purium. It's no mystery that bringing your mind, body, and spirit into balance is necessary if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and grandest version of themselves. So if you've been looking for a way to easily get organic superfoods into your system every day with a simple plan that can help you reestablish a healthier foundation and relationship with food, like I was doing before I found Purium, I highly recommend going to positivehead.com/transformation and checking out the videos and interviews there where I dive deeply into discussions explaining why I take these products every day. And should you ultimately end up on iShopPurium.com to purchase any of their 50 plus amazing superfood products, be sure to use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for a 25% discount. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Soul Share episode, all the way from the UK, I'm very excited to have Judy Hall here with me on the show. Judy is a karmic astrologer, regression therapist, crystal worker, and author of over 40 books, including the multi-million selling, highly acclaimed Crystal Bibles. Judy was recently named as one of the 100 most spiritually influential authors by the Watkins Review. Super excited to have you here with me. Judy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Looking forward to it. Yes, this is going to be wonderful. And, this is probably around episode 870 or so. And I can't believe I haven't had a conversation all about crystals yet, and I thought, this is something, someone brought it up to me, like, this is something that's way overdue. And I thought, you know what? Who better than the Crystal Bible author herself? So I was so excited that we were able to connect and get you on here because, obviously I've had a lot of authors on the show, not too many that have sold millions and millions of copies of their books. So that's quite the feat. And it is a testament to, your ability to sort of put out information that is just, so useful and has helped to educate and enlighten so many people. So I applaud the work that you've done.
It was really brilliant coincidence, in quotes, synchronicity, when I started writing the Crystal Bible, because I had been using crystals basically all my life, and I'm now 75.
Right.
So I'd been obsessed with crystals for a very long time. But I couldn't find anything when I started writing that would really help me to identify the hundreds of crystals that I had. And I had a publisher who said, "Oh, I've got a Bible series, let's do it in there." And then she promptly sold the company to Hamlin, who, of course, were worldwide rather than her little company. And so it was perfect. Out went the Crystal Bible, and it sold its, I think in all 3 editions, it's heading now towards 2 million.
Wow.
Perfect.
Wow, that's a whole lot of books. And what I'd like to do here is actually I have a pretty predictable opening question and ending question, and I'd like to start with my opening question, and that is this: you're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I say crystals and astrology, and that's about, it sums up, because for me, that's it. The karmic astrology and the crystals have always gone hand in hand, and I can talk forever, or I can do 3 sentences, and that's fine. So 10 floors, great.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's like, if you want to dive into crystals and karmic astrology, hopefully you have another 1,000 floors or so to sit with me, because it's going to take a minute.
Absolutely.
We're a very slow elevator.
Yeah, those high-speed things.
Let's hit the stop button here, the little red button, right? Yeah. So why don't you do this? I mean, I'd love to. I always also like to get some backstory, some background. Obviously, you've had an incredible life journey that's really struck a chord with many, many people up to this point. And I'd love to just hear, how did you sort of end up? And you gave us a little glimpse, in regards to the Crystal Bible, but maybe you can start, as far as, start at the beginning with just an overview of how you got here.
Well, it's something that I think was always there, because one of my earliest memories is being up in the English Lake District, which has got a lot of minerals, and picking up shiny, sparkly things with my grandfather when I was about 2. And I used to take them home, and that's how I came to have a very large collection. I then, when I started astrology, put crystals on the chart without really knowing why. It was always an intuitive journey. And I would think this chart needs some earthing, or this chart needs some energy here, or whatever it was. And that's how I came to have this huge collection, which I mostly got then from a very large gentleman who used to sit on a stool in a very strange shop with oil drums of crystals, long before you had the sort of crystal shops we have now. I'm going back 50 years, more than that.
Right.
And I would say to him, "What's this?" And he'd say, "Go away and find out." And that what would all help us.
He would say what?
Go away and find out.
Like, take it with you and go and spend some time with it and tap into it, kind of thing?
Yeah. Interesting. He wouldn't tell me the name. I don't, still to this day, don't know whether he actually believed in crystals as healing tools or simply as minerals, because in those days most people collected minerals.
Right.
Rather than the crystal healing was really unheard of. But I was really fortunate, because I went quite the beginning of 2000s. I went off to do a master's in astronomy and astrology, cultural astronomy and astrology, so that I could look at the history of birthstones. And that gave me the chance to go right back into prehistory and see how stones have been used right the way through. For 7,000-8,000 years, we have a written history of the use of crystals. So when people say to me, it's a New Age fad, which is a criticism that isn't leveled so much now, because more people are getting into crystals, as you know. But they
Right.
used to say, oh, it's all a fad, and there's no history, there's no scientific sort of background to it. And so, well, actually, both astrology and crystals were in mainstream medicine for a very long time.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I always have kind of cringed a little bit at the term New Age too. It's like, this is actually ancient wisdom. It's just new. It's just new to a Western society that has cut off, this knowledge, this wisdom. I've heard that in Native American culture, they refer to, Western society as little brother, because it's like, actually, you may have, we've had the technology and some of this material ego-based things, but have become sort of ignorant to a lot of the ancient ways, and crystals, astrology certainly tie into that. I mean, I think of even the story of Jesus, right? And what were the wise men were following, the stars, right? It's
wonderful. In the Bible, the New Jerusalem that everybody's waiting for is actually founded on crystals. If you read Revelations, the foundation stones for the new world that we're still waiting for is actually crystals, and that harks right back into the Old Testament to Ezekiel, and the throne of God is supported by crystals. And there's a wonderful rejected gospel of Judas, which says that at your birth, you are given a crystal. God allocates you a crystal. And that, so the idea of a birthstone is there. It was back in the Old Testament as well.
Interesting.
It's something that's always been around. And I had a tutor who I thought was wonderful. He, instead of the Enlightenment, he called it the Endarkenment. The 18th century, when science and astrology got parted, when they decided they'd be completely rational about these things, we lost all this ancient intuitive wisdom.
Wow. What's really interesting about what you just said to me, God giving us a crystal, essentially. I was at a gathering last week. Not even a week ago. And I met someone who was really into human design. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with human design, but it is based off of astrology. And I believe astrology, I'm not an expert, but in I Ching maybe, and really interesting, fascinating story. The guy who invented it, how he received it and sort of downloaded this information of human design. But I remember she was really into it. This person that I met, and she was talking about human design and looking up my human design, and then she was talking about how at 3 months prior to birth, essentially a crystal is your crystal core kind of comes into the womb. And I'd never heard anyone kind of say anything like that before. So now here I am within a week hearing twice about us being given, or, as we come into physical incarnation, in this crystal tie-in. So I find that as a very interesting synchronicity, because I hear a lot of stuff, and this is one I had never heard, and now I've heard it twice in a few days. You know what I mean?
So, it's one to follow up.
Yeah, for sure. I always think also of Nikola Tesla, who many view as the, smartest man to ever live. I've seen like Nassim Haramein, who is a quantum physicist, who's actually was on the show a while back, and him saying how we'd be, if we hadn't suppressed Tesla's work, we'd be traveling amongst the stars readily at this point. And, he basically came up with free energy devices that were suppressed, supposedly. And, he said, here's a quote from him. He said, in crystal, we have a pure evidence of the existence of a formative life principle. And although, in spite of everything, we cannot understand the life of crystals, it is still a living being. And I find that really fascinating. It's like, okay, it's alive, right? They're living entities.
Oh, I mean, that was the old understanding. It was animated by the divine energy in ancient Egypt, which is a great thought that it was the god or the goddess. And when you think of it, our bodies are crystalline. We've got iron crystals in our blood. We've got apatite in our magnetite and goodness knows what in our brains. And without those crystal patterns, our bodies wouldn't run.
Right.
So it's innate in us.
Right.
And I love that idea that a crystal is alive. And my granddaughter said to me once when she was very small, she said, "You're talking to a crystal." I said, "Yes," and it's answering me.
Oh, wow.
And she ended up going to bed with a bed full of crystals.
Yeah, I bet. Move over, like fluffy animals. We've got something new in town.
Yeah,
something that talks back.
Got some white beings here. And that's what I always say to people. It sounds funny when you're the person who's written 40-odd books on how to use crystals and what they do. But when people ask me which crystal they should have, I say, which one speaks to you?
Yeah.
And ask it what it wants to do with you. All my workshops, what we're doing is saying, what more can this crystal do? What can it do for a particular person? Because all our energy fields are different and we resonate with different crystals. And some of the crystals are very earthy and ground people who need to be grounded. But once you're really grounded, then you go up to the really high vibration crystals and you're out in the furthest reaches of the galaxy or way beyond the stars. And it's just, to me, that's the excitement of it. Not, this crystal cures a headache. This crystal does this. It's like, yeah, okay, they're very useful at that level. But the excitement for me is the time travel, the dimensional travel, where the vibrations take us.
Now you're... Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe back to the ancestors. To real way back ancestors or our ancestral inheritance. We can go so many places with crystals as we can with astrology.
Yeah, that's such a that is absolutely fascinating. I mean, when you say time travel, it's like I've been saying for a long time, that's what I want. I want to be a time traveler when I grow up. To me, that's like the most glamorous, fun, incredible idea to think about projecting consciousness into other times and seeing sort of peeking in on, alternate timelines, past, future.
Yeah, I do that all the time, and it's amazing. Because you can tune into the Akashic record. Sitting here, I can pick up a crystal, I can go to the Akashic record, I did a book on sacred sites and crystals so that you could travel using the appropriate crystal to the sacred site without having to move from your armchair. And people laughed until they tried it.
Wow.
And then, we do workshops on this. You should come to England, come to a workshop.
I think I'm coming. I actually, it's funny because that's my roots. I actually did my ancestry recently, and it's, English, Irish is the primary, over 50%. And I would love to I've never been to Europe, and I would absolutely love to come. And what a great I like to go with a purpose too, not to just, sort of meander around, to have something to attend. And that sounds absolutely fascinating. And, my son, we've been talking about doing a trip, and he has just turned 20, and him and I, I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life and have, had some pretty, relatively large success. I had an Inc. 569th fastest growing private company in the U.S. a few years ago. And now he's sort of getting that entrepreneurial bug, and what he wants to do. And he's just become a voracious reader and studier, and including your books. And, the first thing he's decided he wants to do for his very first entrepreneurial venture is to to create basically an online crystal shop for bracelets. So just having all the variations, starting with 40, 50 or so different ones. And he's been studying a lot about crystals just in the last couple months as he's decided, I'm going to help him kind of oversee this project, having been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. But that's his first little thing is starting this online, sacred, we're going to call it Philosopher's Stone, and we're going to have the Philosopher's Stone symbol on one of the bracelet beads, and sort of as an idea of, Philosopher's Stone was, you could transmute energy and transmute things to gold, and it's like applying that to your own consciousness, sort of as a reminder to, isn't that a wonderful idea? And the symbol is really cool.
Age. Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, so I bringing him to see you, and we've been talking about a trip anyway, and actually going through your workshops. That sounds like a big yes to me. So you may very well see us over there.
I mean, the workshops I'm really excited about this year. Actually, it's now 2 years we realised, but I've been going to Avebury Stone Circle. And if you're interested in earth energies and old sacred sites, Avebury is one of the most powerful because it's on the Michael and Mary ley line, and it goes way back. And we actually do our workshops at the joining point, the crossover point of the Michael and Mary line and the innermost north and south circle. So we're in the most incredibly energetic space to start with. Can you imagine doing crystal dragons and crystal unicorns and crystal skulls and expanding your consciousness in a place like that? You're halfway there when you just enter the circle. But the person who runs, Donna, the person who runs the shop, Elements of Avebury, makes jewellery. And she was drawn there because of it being the perfect site to make and sell her jewellery. And she's always used crystals. So when we met up, it was like, oh, yes, this is a soul sister. Let's really use this. So we're having some wonderful times. And we're going to do an earth energy healing one. We're doing psychic protection next because so many people need that. But then we did unicorns. Because I don't know what it's like in the States, but in England, everywhere you go, there's pictures of unicorns. Unicorns on kids' clothes, unicorns on adult clothes, bags, books. But nobody seems to be working with, very few people, with the actual energy of them. And I met a crystal unicorn, at College of Psychic Studies, where I do a lot of workshops as well. And it said to me, it's about time you started doing crystal workshops. So I brought it home and became the keeper of the biggest gathering. They're called blessings of unicorns. So I have this huge crystal blessing. And we did the first workshop, and they said, we've got to get grounded. First lesson, we've really got to anchor the energy to the earth. Then we can see where we go from there. And that was in Avebury. And it was wonderful.
Wow.
So your son would really like being there. He'd like meeting Donna and seeing the bracelets. And also just the idea, because it's circles within circles. It's a big henge, and then there is the outer circle, the inner circle. It really takes you into a different space of consciousness, which something like a bracelet can do.
Yes,
as well, wearing it.
That's the whole idea, is like, hey, his whole thing is, and mine as well, anything that we're sort of behind in promoting in any way, is it benefiting the people? Doing something for making money is just kind of out of the question at this point. From my perspective, it's like, it has to be doing something to help, really help people. And if it's raising consciousness and creating healing effects in any way, shape, or form, that's pretty much ideal for me on a go forward any project. So I'm glad he's starting there. I didn't necessarily start there in my own entrepreneurial journey, but he is certainly more evolved at 20 than I was by a long shot. And I think it's funny. You also mentioned dragons and dragon energy, and funny enough, I just someone shared with me this wonderful, like hilarious meme about dragons, little video an hour ago. And I posted it everywhere online in the Positive Heads Facebook group, where listeners kind of gather and share things. And someone else wrote, "Oh, I'm seeing so much dragon stuff all of a sudden." And it was like a really inspiring but funny, little dragon video. So that's the thing.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's great. I'll have to send it to you. It's these are real energies, and I think a lot of times people don't realize that this idea of a unicorn or a dragon or a Sasquatch, or when you start talking about multidimensional realities and people who are really sensitive, it's just a recurring theme. I've had one of my favorite people I've had on the show. She's told me all about her experience up in Mount Shasta with a Sasquatch, and this isn't someone who's just kooky and off her rocker. It's like actually the opposite, super grounded and sane and clear, amazing energy. And I think it's fascinating, that some of these energies, I feel like as we ascend vibrationally collectively, the veil between these dimensions seems to be thinning. And I think we'll only hear more of this sort of thing.
We go, crystal, my sort of local crystal group, we go to a mountain in Wales, which is pretty much crystal. There used to be a lead mine there, and you can walk up this mountain and pick up pieces of crystal, which we do. And at the top, there is this huge golden dragon. The energy is there, but this dragon manifests itself. And, I talk about this in workshops and to people, and they go, you can see them looking a bit, really? Give them a piece of that mountain, crystal off that mountain, walk them up there in their imagination, and they're dancing with a big golden dragon at the top in about 10 minutes flat.
Wow.
And it's a very potent healing energy, but it's healing for the earth, and it's healing in the sense of bringing back into balance, but at a higher level than it has been. So it's like everything's shifting up in vibration, and these beings like this great big golden crystal dragon and all its friends, and there are a lot of them, are manifesting now to help with that. And, when you're a kid, you believe in dragons. If you read the right stories, you see them as playful, helpful. You don't see them as something to be killed. We spend a lot of time releasing that poor dragon from St. Michael's lance. And that then brings that energy back into our consciousness and this dimension. And it really is part of an interwoven. They're mythical beings in quotes, but I love the definition of mythology as truth in disguise.
Wow, I've never heard that.
Yeah, it was known. It was almost like taken for granted. It was a fact. And then it disappeared into the realms of mythology because people thought they were becoming more evolved and more rational. And now that we've sort of got to evolve out of that rational head thing and back into making connections with these beings. It always amuses me because people have no problem connecting with Jesus or God or Muhammad or whoever these days.
Right.
But way back, what did you connect to? You connected to a great big Gaia was almost like a dragon-like monster in Mesopotamia, and it was Tiamat, and we just humanized and anthropomorphized the god, the divine energy, the goddess energy, into something that was in human form. But before that, they were in these ancient. Yes, they looked a bit like animals. I mean, I was in Egypt last month walking around the tombs again, and the number of snakes and dragons that I saw there, It's phenomenal. You know, they were so much a part of the energy.
Right.
And it's like, let's reconnect.
Right. Yeah, it's, you know, for someone who hasn't had an experience where they're sort of seeing things multidimensionally in a sense, right? Because what you're saying is, hey, I'm not seeing these things in 3D like you know, like a dog, right? But what do you think is the difference between someone who is seeing, you know, obviously you've had a very vivid experience, you know, mentioning astral travel or time travel and seeing, you know, entities as you sort of walk around and tuning into these, you know, these energies. What do you recommend for someone who hasn't had that sort of experience yet, but is open to and would like to?
Sitting with a crystal. I mean, one of my favorites is Priscelli Bluestone, which you can now get in the States. I had some for many years from the Priscelli Mountains. Now, Priscelli
Can you
Mountains,
spell that?
Preseli.
Okay,
And
Priscelli.
it's a bluestone which you only find in a particular part of Wales. There's one outcrop. But in ancient times, they brought stones from there to the middle of Stonehenge. 150 miles, they managed to bring them because they were ancient sacred stones. So obviously, the ancient people were using them in particular ways that we've lost track of now. I mean, I think they're a time travel machine, you know, as well as for healing, and because they're highly paramagnetic. They're very directional. So you can now get stones from there. They're being quarried and tumbled. And if you sit with one of those and ask it to take you where you need to go, where you want to go, you know, you can direct it to a particular place. You can put it on your third eye or the soma chakra, which is just above the third eye, which is a spirit link point. And you can travel with that crystal. I've done numerous workshops using that as a way of looking at past lives, a way of looking at picking up your old skills, especially, you know, if you want to know what you've already learned. People think of karma as, oh, what did I get wrong that I'm paying for?
Right.
But actually, there's very positive karma as well. You know, we've all learned a lot. And the bluestone particularly links in to things like herbal medicine, herbal knowledge, earth energy knowledge. But what it does, it the way I put it, it shakes you loose from being totally anchored in 3D. And it takes your conscious mind, your ability to be in another place. It helps you to travel. So if you sit with a Priscelli Bluestone, everybody that I've had in the workshop has journeyed with it.
Wow. And
you know, so I know that particular stone works really well.
Wow.
And you can buy it from, I always recommend in the States, Exquisite Crystals, which is online, because I know that John is very ethical, and, you know, it's the highest possible care goes into his crystals. You can buy it from Astrology-Wise, which are my crystals in England. Somebody runs that site for me. But we can guarantee that they are the right crystals from the right place with the right energy.
Wow.
So I would do that. Or, you know, even a piece of quartz will take you journeying up to another level of consciousness if you ask it to. And this is one of the things. It's very basic, but there's two things people say to me constantly. Oh, this crystal used to work and it doesn't anymore. So I say, have you cleaned it? Very basic. You need to clean your crystals because they get full up. And then they'll say, doesn't do anything for me. And I'll say, well, have you actually asked it to?
Right.
And, you know, again, a lot of people, they'll pick up a crystal, they'll sit there and they'll look at it. Well, for some people, especially people who are sensitive to these things, it's like, whoosh, you've gone, you know, you're in with the crystal. But for people who are more cautious or haven't had much experience, they may need to do a little bit of just, where does this crystal actually connect to me? How does it connect to me? Does it talk to me? Do I hear it? Do I feel it? Does it attract attention in my body somewhere? You know, again, it's one of those things that you, until you get into working with them, you tend to think you put the crystal here and it does something. So, you know, that's it. Boom. But actually, it's not like that at all, because the crystal's learning to work with you and your energy just as much as you're learning to work with the crystal. Goes back to that thing about the crystal's alive. And the energy, it's putting out a frequency, it's got an energy. And that has to align and harmonize with your energy. That can take a little while. To just daily, you know, even if it's 5 minutes, sitting with a crystal starts people off on that journey of opening their consciousness. They can take it through the chakras. There's so much to explore.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's great advice. Would you say that the bluestone is sort of your favorite crystal? I mean, is there another favorite or most powerful crystal that comes to mind?
Bluestone is one of my favorites because the other thing it does, it's extremely good when you're physically traveling. It helps you to find your direction and it protects you. So it's usually in my kit. My very favorite crystal, the crystal I wouldn't be without, is a Brandenburg Amethyst, which comes from a sacred site in Namibia. And that, it holds the pure energy before anything got imprinted.
Right.
So you can take your energy back. You can it clears blocks, it clears imprints, contracts, whatever you want to call it. And then it realigns your energy. And you get within the one crystal, you get amethyst, smoky, and clear. The crystal may not show those colors, but the bed of crystals has that energy, and therefore you've got the protection and the earth connection from the smoky. You've got a very spiritual connection with the amethyst and the clear. So that's the crystal I travel with. When I've only got 5 kilos of hand luggage on a plane, my Brandenburg goes with me. Wouldn't be without it. Similarly, I always take some flint from home. Where I live here, I'm on chalk, and we've got flint everywhere. And it's a very underrated crystal because people often don't think of it as a crystal at all. But it's a very grounding and cleansing stone. So I put that at my feet, and in workshops, everybody gets a bit of flint, and it goes at their feet. Because once you're connected and grounded into the center of the earth, then it's safe to travel anywhere because you'll always come back. So, you know, that's a very important one for me. And I've usually got something to help my immune system. I have Quantum Quattro, which is 5 different minerals in one, which I travel with. That's getting very difficult to find now. So people use bloodstone or something like that. But I reckon with those crystals, I can do virtually anything that I need to do. And then at different times, other things come in. I love anandamide because it's just pure celestial light, divine light, or I use selenite, which does the same thing, which is clear. It's when you've done work with crystals, whatever it is, if you then need a holding space for the changes to take place, because it all filters down to the physical level eventually, but you're working through the etheric bodies. And so something like an andalite or selenite puts literally light in between the cells of your etheric body or physical body to hold a space for the changes to take place.
Wow.
And that's something I'm realizing more and more now with this very high dimensional work, that we need to do that. Otherwise we create a vacuum. And you know, we've released all this, I always use the word crap for it, you know, it's karmic stuff, it's toxic, it's ancestral, it's whatever. We have a lot of releasing of that, whether it's in our bodies or in the earth. And then we need to have this holding space into which we can input fresh energy. And that's where the Brandenburg comes in.
Interesting. Now, you know, one that seems to really intrigue people that I've come across anyway is Moldavite. You know, and I'm sure you're familiar, you know, and it's funny. I love when I hear like similar stories from people about, you know, Moldavite, like kind of disappearing and then reappearing. And, you know, for those that don't know, of course, this is one that came on what was it? Maybe a few billion years ago or something. It was a long time back. It actually
one of the meteorites that came in and scattered itself and has sort of been used ever since. I think it's very shamanic stone. But it's brilliant for time travel and for traveling through the dimensions. But everybody I know who works with Moldavite, sometimes it's in this dimension, sometimes it's in another one. And you have to wait for it to come back, you know. It definitely travels.
Yeah.
And it's a great stone for those who can handle it. For some people, it's too much.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Like a lot of times people that are sensitive are like, whoa, they're kind of cautious of it. You know what I mean? Like,
I know there's a guy locally whose wife has a crystal shop, and he still is a thatcher, you know, making roofs for houses with roofs. And he's goes down the pub, has his pint, you know, he's a very earthy guy. And he picked up a piece of Moldavite, and he said it took him about 3 days to get back in his body. It just blew him out, literally. He was walking around. He said, my head was about 10 feet above my body, and I was watching myself. And that can happen to people. And, you know, eventually he got grounded again. But he is sensitive, and it always amuses me, you know, that correlation between he spends a lot of his time on a roof and then he has to come back down to earth. And I mean, over the years he's now got very used to stones and is a natural shaman. But I think that happens to so many people, that they make that sort of very sudden connection with a stone like Moldavite. That's why I recommend Priscilla to start with, because it's a more grounded stone, but still with a powerful effect.
Right. All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. So I had the most interesting experience I've had with a crystal, and I actually talk about it. If any of you guys are interested in hearing like the whole story, if you go to episode 2 of the podcast way in the beginning, and then episode 671, I talk a little bit about it. And I'm curious if you are familiar with this one called Yeming Zhu. And it's supposedly, a glowing stone that was like very, very rare, only found in China, emperor's most prized possession for hundreds of years. There's been only one book ever written on it that's now out of print. And I came across someone who actually was connected to someone in China who about a decade or so ago figured out how to make these in a lab. He basically was telling me all about it, and I had this, and I share the tale in those episodes, but this wild experience with it over the course of 14 hours or so. And much like Moldavite, it disappeared on me and then reappeared in this dramatic fashion with a note. And then I met someone else who I just overheard them having a conversation about their Yeming Zhu disappearing the night before and reappearing. And I was like, what? I'm hearing my same thing happen to this person. But supposedly they're really fascinating. There's like purple and green and blue, and they just hold, exposed to light, they glow for hours and hours and hours and hours. And so, I just curious if you'd ever heard of it.
I've had those, what purported to be those stones.
Right.
I have to say they didn't do anything for me. I don't resonate very much with lab grown stones.
Something lab. Yep.
Anyway, sometimes I do, but that one I didn't. But the one that I've got downstairs, which glowed briefly for the first, it's on my window ledge, so it gets the morning sun. It no longer glows. So I don't know how authentic it was.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, and that's what my friend talked about. He said there's a lot of like fakes that were made. He claims his are like, they're not the originals that are super rare and you can't find, but they are the lab grown ones. And, I know I've had a few of them for, 7 years or so, and they still grow as brilliantly as they ever did. And like I said, I did have some, interestingly enough, my most powerful experience. One of the most fascinating stories I have revolved around the night I was introduced to the stone and then what kind of transpired after. But I was curious what your thoughts were on something being lab grown, and then if you even were aware of this one, because it seems like a lot of times I'll bring it up and it's people haven't even heard of it. I figured you would have at least.
I've not written on it because of the fact that I wasn't convinced.
Right.
I actually had a bracelet with one on as well, and that actually made me feel quite not sure about it at all, kind of feeling. So I've avoided it. But I wrote, it's on my website, a blog on alchemical crystals, because I got very interested when I found a translation of an ancient Egyptian text all about making crystals. And in some cases, they actually ground up existing crystals and then alchemicalized them with heat and different minerals to make their jewelry. And they were infusing the divine energy and different things into their crystals. And I find some of the aura quartzes that are alchemicalized with gold or indium or whatever. Very potent, but equally, so many now are dyed.
Right.
I had what were we talking about, 15, 20 years ago, my thyroid was pronounced dead. And
Wow.
I had Tanzine aura quartz, alchemicalized with indium and various things, which I put on my throat. I also had homeopathy, and my thyroid works again.
Wow.
So when I met somebody who said, "Oh, I've just been diagnosed with a really underactive thyroid," I immediately said to her, "Get a Tanzine aura quartz and wear it constantly." Well, she rang me up and said, "I've come out in blisters."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, stop using it immediately." And her husband had a crystal shop, and he'd obtained it from what appeared to be a reputable supplier. When he rang the reputable supplier, they said, "Oh, it's dyed."
Wow.
It wasn't alchemicalized. The color was the same. From looking at it, you cannot tell the difference. But from the feel, it's very different.
Wow.
And it's like, whoa, that really taught me to be very careful with where the source of your crystals is.
Yeah.
Because you can so easily buy, especially online. And I mean, the Chinese now are growing the most incredible things in labs.
Right.
Some of them really make me feel sick, and really feel that they've got a very detrimental energy for me.
Wow.
But other people love them.
Right.
So it's horses for courses, we say in England. If you have the same saying, but it's like, what suits your vibration suits you may not suit the other person.
Right.
But I find it fascinating because my 5-year-old great-granddaughter had a grow your own crystal kit for Christmas.
Oh,
and
cool.
So I'm waiting to see what she grows. What grows.
Yeah. And what it feels like, huh?
Feels. Because
interesting.
in vibratory terms, she's come in with the most incredible knowledge and everything that we have learned. She already knows,
Right.
And so I'm just waiting to see what happens with that crystal. And does what she knows go into the crystal as well? Because I think that happens. I've seen people who've brought in broken crystals that they've healed, which is always fascinating. And crystals do that naturally in the ground anyway. They can break and then self-heal. But I know 2 or 3 healers who've healed stones, or the crystals have carried on growing. And they've definitely put some of their own energy into that.
Right.
Because the stone is so receptive.
Right.
So
Right.
I have to say, I tend to avoid lab-grown crystals, but I'm not saying they have no value. I'm saying they have value if you resonate with them.
Yep. Yeah, it gets back to this, a lot of it even gets back to, I jokingly say, I feel like when we cross over, we'll find out everything was placebo because it's based off belief. And there's even new study that shows that the placebo effect is increasing in potency on our planet. And it's baffling science. And that makes so much sense to me as people realize, more and more people are realizing that we create our reality with our thoughts and beliefs and energy, right? And so it's something to, of course, tie into, I don't know if you're familiar with the teacher Bashar, who, claims to be a channel, and one of the things that he calls them is permission slips. He's like, all of this, everything is a permission slip. You give yourself a reason as to why it should or shouldn't work. And as long, if that reason suits you in a way that allows you to open the door energetically, then, hey, whatever permission slip you need, essentially. And I find that all really, really fascinating to when you start tying in.
That's what, I tend to call that intention.
Yeah.
If you put intention into a crystal, or if equally if you attune to the intention of the crystal. But at some level, it's all energy.
Right.
And I can't explain that scientifically, but my gut knows at some level it's all energy and vibration.
Yep.
And thought is an energy, it's a vibration, intention is. And I love that idea, it's a permission slip. That's a great way to describe it.
It really is. It really resonated with me, and I've shared it ever since I heard it, because it's like, and it's funny enough, because if you go to the Positive Head, positivehead.com, the website for the show, when I originally launched it, the first thing was creating a product that's a bracelet that is made from recycled materials. And the whole idea was a permission slip, like something that you could, I had someone who told me they had worn they had basically had trouble with depression, and their doctor had told them this idea of wearing a rubber band and just sort of using it as a little reminder to snap yourself if snap yourself if you're having a negative thought or going down a negative spiral. And you may have heard of this idea before, and I thought that was really fascinating to me. And then so I ended up originally creating a little bracelet that's still there that people can get and sort of even name your price for. It's just like, I just want to give them away, whatever. If if people want to pay costs, they can. And it's it's just that. It's like using this as a permission slip, as a tool, is and even for me, it's like ultimately just using it as a visual reminder, not even necessarily snapping yourself or whatever. And it's just it's such a powerful thing to realize that and I think that's why ritual is important as well, and why it is such a powerful thing to set out and do any sort of ritual. Just setting that intention, you're drumming up energy. And of course, that's something that you're probably very familiar with in your workshops and whatnot, is these rich crystal rituals. And that seems to be like maybe the number one type of ritual that people, sort of engage in, is creating crystal grids and these sorts of things, right?
Yes. I will sometimes use the word ritual, but for a lot of people, maybe not so much in the States, but in England, they kind of back off from that.
It's a negative connotation.
Negative connotation. So I call it crystal grids. I mean, I did a whole book on crystal grids, and virtually everything in there really is a ritual, but it's not named as such. I did do years ago a book on love crystals and put a love ritual in. People like that because the idea of love, it couldn't possibly be the bad connotation to ritual. Right. But apart from the crystal Bibles, virtually every one of my books is using some form of ritual in order to heal or for well-being or prosperity, whatever it is. You're using ritual because when we look back, that's been used for thousands of years.
Right.
That deliberate, setting out with intention to do something, whatever it is, and you lay out a crystal grid, and you're creating an energetic pattern, and you're setting an intention with it. And that really supports people. Mm-hmm. And it changes the energy. Right. Yeah, you're drumming up the vibration, of whatever it is you're trying to achieve, and giving, with all the actions that you're taking and steps that you're taking, you're really just, drumming up that vibration, drumming up that energy. And I think that's it's a very, very powerful thing to do, no matter what you call it, for that very reason. And I think it's really important as well. One of the things I realized was that once you've done that, you leave it alone. You don't keep going back and poking it to see if it's working. It's like when you plant a seed, you don't keep digging it up to check it's sprouting. Right. That makes sense. I used to meet people who every day they were focusing on this crystal and they were making it work, and it's so much better. Just you've done your ritual, you've laid out your grid, whatever you've done, and then you just go right over to you now, and you just breathe out and relax. and then it manifests.
Yeah.
I find that really hyper kind of approach to constantly got to make it work. That is very counterproductive because it doesn't create any space for things to change.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very important point, is allowing things the space to breathe and grow. And sort of when you bring that relaxed approach to it, that is very fertile ground for something to grow. And if you bring an anxious energy to it, it creates... That makes so much sense.
Crystals have really taught me, is they just say chill, relax.
Right.
And the best thing you can do for yourself if you're anxious or depressed or worrying, pick up a crystal, wear a crystal, because it will do that for you. It'll put you in a space where you can take the time to grow.
Right.
You need just for things to change or to sit with it. And I think that's another thing that this whole sort of new age thinking has been to push change. You've got to shift vibration. You've got and you've got, you must. All of these words come in. And what crystals say is, just sit with what's there. I did a book on crystal mindfulness, and that's really what the crystals kept saying, and we put into the book, was crystals give you a focus, so it allows the space around you just to be and to accept, and not necessarily need to change, but in the accepting and not necessarily needing to change happens, but you don't force it or push it, and it takes its time. Right timing, I think, is always important, which comes back to astrology again. There are cycles in astrology, and you take advantage of them and you go with the flow. If you try and push against the river, you're not going to get anywhere. Right.
Absolutely. Speaking of the whole idea of tapping into the crystals for knowledge, information, to travel, time travel. One of the crystals that's I found really interesting, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is Lemurians. And what I've heard, and you tell me if this is correct. Now, for those of you who haven't ever seen a Lemurian, it basically has lines on it, right? And what I've been told is that those lines are actually information that was encoded by the Lemurian people, all those, however many thousands and thousands of years ago, and you can access. It's sort of like a hard drive almost, and you're seeing the lines of.
It's like a ladder. You can just take your finger up it, and it takes you to different dimensions. I'm really fortunate in that I have the most amazing Lemurian crystal love grid. A guy contacted me and said, Judy, I'm selling up and I've got this grid and they're telling me that you ought to be the next keeper.
Wow.
And I thought it was you've seen most Lemurians, they're no longer than my hand, possibly the size of a finger, 2 fingers.
Yep.
This thing arrived. He gifted me the rest. I bought the 2 main stones, and one's the Mary Magdalene one, which is amazing. He gifted me the rest of the circle, and in fact, there's on my Facebook, on Crystal Judy Hall Facebook, there's a video of us putting this out at one of my local sacred sites, and you can see how big these crystals are. They are massive. Absolutely massive. In fact, they weigh 12 kilos.
Wow.
So I was going to merrily take this round to the different places I went until I weighed it and realized that I couldn't even take it as hand luggage on a plane, I was going to take it on. So I actually made, with a friend, I had a lot of Lemurians, so I actually made a surrogate grid. So the big grid stays at home, and the little grid goes. And again, I'm pretty sure on my Facebook page there's some of the grid, pictures of the grid in Egypt. We took it to Egypt and took it to the temples. But there are different kinds of Lemurians which have come out more recently. And we included in that a pink Lemurian, which has a natural pink look and feel to it. Very soft love. A strawberry Lemurian, which they've got a red coating, and whoa, are they energetic.
Wow.
And then a golden Lemurian, which literally, glows gold. And
wow.
I just find them fascinating, I have to say. And you find Lemurian markings on other stones, occasionally other crystals. But the major ones that came from Brazil were, of course, all found together loose, sort of laying in a great big heap. I think most of that has been mined away now. But they wanted to be released. Again, they said, we want to go out, time to start doing our work.
Right.
And I was very fortunate in that I did a karmic reading for somebody, and he paid me in Lemurian crystals. I love when these things happen. He paid me for some other work in Herkimer diamonds, because he had a Herkimer diamond mine in his back garden. But his father-in-law had a crystal place in Brazil and had some of the original Lemurians, just small ones, little finger size, which I've been using in workshops because they're portable, and they'll take you back into Lemuria to see what you knew. We usually do a wonderful journey from Lemuria to Atlantis, and then on from there, changing stones as we go. But it is just the energy in the room when you've got a room or a grid of Lemurians is just phenomenal.
Wow.
It's like they pick you up and put you down in some completely different place. And I think Marion was a completely different place. There's a wonderful book that I read years ago. I've never been able to find it again, where it said that the Lemurians were lightly clothed in skin. So they were energetic beings who were just coming into physical incarnation, but were nowhere near as dense. And so Atlantis was denser, and then we're much denser still. And that's the sense that you get when you work with a Lemurian. You are lightly clothed in skin.
Wow. So when you have your own experiences, are you seeing like vivid detail images and accounts of, the civilization, and just accessing information the way you would at a library in a sense?
It varies for me. I think because I've been doing it so long. When I first started, it was just literally like stepping, if I was looking at another civilization, stepping back into it, was surrounded by it. It was always like virtual reality.
Wow.
I still do that sometimes. But equally, if I'm doing a reading for someone and I'm tuning in, now I just have to trust and open my mouth and talk, and it will come out. I may see images, I may feel it in my body, or I may just have to talk.
Right.
That's not difficult for me.
No, definitely not. Thankfully.
But, I think it's practice, it's training, it's over 50 years of doing it.
Right.
So, but I have to say, it is when you are in the middle of it, when it's all around you, it is so much more persuasive initially than it is to see it. Some people, and I used to this as well, would see it projected like a film.
Right.
So you could watch the film But that is the difference. It's the difference between putting a virtual reality headset on now, because we can now do this, or going to the cinema and watching a film. And the crystals that are around, that are coming out, the new crystals, they seem to be accessing, it's like they're keeping pace with that, with the developments in computer technology. You don't actually need the computer technology with the new stones, because they'll do it as well.
Right.
I like that idea. They're evolving.
I do too. Yeah, that's the organic computer. The organic computer. Yeah. Well, and even in microchips and everything, crystals are a key componet, right?
Well, so you can't have a computer without a quartz crystal. So
Yep.
Which way around is it really?
Which is fascinating. Probably some people haven't really thought of that or realized that, but it says a whole lot about the power of these things.
Oh, absolutely. And this tiny little chip, to me, is holographic. And all crystals everywhere of a particular type resonate with each other. Yeah. It's almost like we're living in a crystal hologram.
Yes. Right. Makes me think back to the old Superman from the 80s, where he would go to his home in the north. I don't know if you ever saw that. And he would take these crystals and he would plug them in. It was like an ice home or castle almost that he went to, and he'd take these crystals and sort of plug them in to, and all of a sudden he would get a hologram of his father's, message that, who no longer was alive, but that was saved from. Yeah. I just got a vision of that. For those of you who haven't seen it, that's like a really cool, I remember seeing it as a kid thinking, wow, what is going on? Like, what a cool interface.
The writers must have had these kind of experiences.
Yeah. It's pretty.
I would love to interview the person who wrote that and said, how did that idea come to you?
Yep.
And also
very.
Fact that, Superman also, his one vulnerability was that other crystal.
That's right. You're right.
There was a crystal that could undo
Kryptonite.
His power.
Kryptonite.
Yep. And that was reflecting, there is a crystal for you, there is a crystal that is not for you, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, and that would be
that makes me think of. Yeah. That makes me think of a question that I'd like to ask you. And that is, it's been a hot topic lately, this whole topic of EMFs and electromagnetics. And even, a lot is coming out now with people using 5G for Wi-Fi in their homes or office or whatever. Oh. And that being in phones, and that being like really detrimental to our bodies and minds. And
did a book
what do you know about that?
I know I've done a lot of research. I did crystal prescription, one of my crystal prescription series on EMFs, and a lot of research was done here in the 80s, and I got in touch with the professor who did it, and he said, nobody listened.
Right.
And his research has been just sitting there. And I wrote it before the whole 5G thing really kicked off. But I put on my Facebook the other day, worried about 5G, shungite is the answer. And somebody immediately posted and said, no, getting rid of 5G is the answer. Which I agree, but, I just don't think we're able to do that.
Right. If you want to still be able to access the internet, then shungite's the answer. Unless you come up with a crystal that can help you to access the internet, which stay tuned. Maybe that's coming up next.
Well, wear shungite, drink shungite water is my answer, because I am extremely electrosensitive. I think a lot of people are once they've been working with crystals for a while. And I actually have a program on my computer that protects the computer from my energies, as well as being
interesting.
It was done for people, created for people like me, Computer Clear program. But it has a lot of homeopathic remedies, flower essences, and crystals. So it actually beams to me what I need. But before I had that program, the computer would crash within 10, 15 minutes of me being on it.
Wow.
And even now, if I'm around computers that aren't running that program, it's very likely they'll either go very slow or they'll crash.
Wow.
Which, I always have, that's the other crystal I wouldn't be without. I always have shungite about my person somewhere. I'm either wearing it or it's, my usual thing is tuck it into a bra. I always say men are so disadvantaged that they don't wear bras. They're perfect for keeping your crystal.
It's funny because my son, that's the first crystal he's worn as, the first bracelet he got and made for himself, as he went down this rabbit hole in the recent months with this new project, is a shungite bracelet.
Yeah. Well, his next project should be some kind of holder for men so that you can do the equivalent of tucking your crystal into your bra, because quite often you need it under your left arm,
Right.
Every time I go through airport security and I get they have these awful X-ray things.
Yeah.
Look at you, and they pull me aside and they go, "What's that, and that?" And I say, "That's shungite crystals to protect me from what you're doing to me."
Right.
Because I always travel covered in shungite and with my Priscilla bluestone, because that also helps. But
interesting.
People don't think. You get into a plane, it's an EMF cage. And now they're proudly telling you can use your mobile phone, you can use any sort of screen, laptop. Oh, yeah, I was on a plane the other day. Oh, yeah, we're going to have Wi-Fi. It's like, no, please don't. That's one airline definitely not flying on again. And same with trains. All our trains here now, you can get your Wi-Fi, you can do whatever. And so I pile all the shungite on because it's the only way I can travel. Otherwise, I get off and I'm wrecked.
Interesting. Wow.
But there's certainly the research when I was doing crystal prescription, I think it's number 3 in the series, about 8 in the series now. But it really surprised me, and yet it didn't, because before I started writing that, I was at an art class, so nothing to do with crystals. And I sat next to this woman, and you know how you say, "What do you do?" She said, "I work for this for Tetra, which was used in England as police radio communications, and all the police guys got very sick." And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you're one of those people, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I and all my friends are protesting about Tetra masks and police having to wear these things." I said, "Because we're seeing what it does. We've seen the research." She said, "Oh, we know, so we're changing it because it actually was sent out at the vibration of the human cell. So it was disrupting all the cells in the body."
Wow.
And so the companies know what's going on. It was the same with mobile phones when they first started coming in. Someone I knew who made first mobile phone protectors got a phone call from one of these companies wanting to order 2 million. He was a little home industry.
Wow.
And they said, we know that it's giving people tumors. We know that people who always use their mobile phone on their left will get the tumor on the left. People who use it on the right will get it on the right. We want to put something in the mobile phone to protect the user. So it's not that they were denying that the effect was there. They were doing their best to counteract it before it had the effect.
Right.
Again, it's like shungite. Stick a shungite on your mobile phone, you're okay.
Right.
It really does help screen it. Yeah.
Interesting. So to shift gears just a little bit, Judy, one of the things that you do that I'm really curious about is, well, a couple of things, really. I mean, one, you do karmic astrology and also past life therapy. And I find both of those intriguing. I've never heard it put as, astrology, karmic astrology, and then, of course, past life therapy. So I'd love to hear a little bit about those. And I know also I had sent over my birth details, and you took a quick glance at it. So I'd be curious any insight that you have into either or both of those things.
All right. Well, let's start with your birth chart. Because this amused me so much, I have to say. I get an email just before we did this interview saying, it might be fun to do my karmic astrology. Here's my birth details. And I print off the chart. And there's a finger of fate straight across the chart. And a finger of fate is exactly what it sounds like. It's energies that you came back to integrate. And so when we look at your chart, first of all, you've got Scorpio ascendant, which really has to dig deep. It has to go into all the taboo areas of life. So your intention was to come and dig around in all this stuff. And as deep as you can go with Scorpio, so you can go equally high in consciousness. So you've got that focus, that spread. And then I was looking at this finger of fate. So on one corner, we've got your moon conjunct Neptune, which is a very deeply ingrained instinctive emotional response to life. Moon in Sag asks all the great questions of life. You've studied this stuff for lifetimes. But
interesting.
You've got it conjunct Neptune. So what you're doing now is sort of sorting through what you believed in the past, seeing what is illusion, what's deception, self-deception, because that's Neptune, or what is the highest mystical consciousness. And then you've also got your North Node in Sagittarius sitting here. Sorry, did I say Moon in Scorpio or Moon in Sagittarius? I meant Moon in Sagittarius. But with Neptune, it gets very confusing. Anyway.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
So, North Node in Sagittarius, you are reworking all that Moon stuff you knew, and you are having now to share it. But not only to share it, to live it. I always say Sagittarius has to stop asking questions and learn to live the answers.
Right.
And to be, to really be. So that's one corner of this thing of fate. And then the point, which isn't the outlet for it, but the point is Mercury, Saturn, and Venus, all in Cancer. So in the past, with Mercury, Saturn, you would have been suppressed and prevented from putting the information out there. Sometimes that can be like in a mystery school, or you've been initiated and there's secrecy. But sometimes it can be society, because this is in the 9th house. It can be society's not ready to hear it, or you're deliberately kept quiet. And then with Venus there, this is emotions having to be hidden as well. But the real sort of karmic bit is Saturn, Venus not feeling valued, not feeling worthy, not able to love itself, and therefore quite often prostituting talents, abilities, because this is 9th house, this is publishing and going out to the world with information. So it's like with Cancer, with the crab shell, this has all had to be kept under wraps for lifetimes. And then you come down, I don't very often, and I've only just really started going back to looking at the dark moon Lilith, which is almost like the shadow side of the moon, but it's also the suppressed dark feminine, the divine feminine, which has really got to come back out to balance this stuff. Because Saturn, Mercury is rational head stuff, but we've also got Neptune, Mercury, which is intuitive. So you've done both. But what fascinated me, what made me really smile when I looked at the chart in terms of it being the moment to ask this question, was the outlook point for a finger of fate is opposite the point. And by transit at the moment, by the movement of Saturn overhead, at the moment, it is right on the outlook point for your finger of fate. So you are looking at a moment when all these things that you haven't been able to express can really be put out there.
Interesting. I definitely feel that because, not only with this show, but now I'm moving into doing a talk show, TV, video series type show starting this summer is what I'm working on currently, which, I've had multiple intuitives, probably 5, tell me once you're going to do something in video and it's going to reach a lot more people than what you're doing currently. And so kind of prepare yourself for that. So that's interesting because that's exactly what I feel I'm sort of on the precipice of. Yes.
And because of the Saturn transit, to keep Saturn happy, it is a planet of karma, but it's also a planet of great wisdom. But it needs concrete plans. Otherwise, it tends to put blocks in your way. It's like it's recreating the initiations again.
Right.
And so, if you've got a concrete plan and you can say to Saturn, I've thought about that, I've done this, I've organized that, Saturn will go, oh, right, you passed the test, now you can get on with it.
Right.
That was one thing that I thought on timing. But the other thing is, natally, in your natal chart, you've got Uranus in the 12th house, which is the karmic house. And Uranus in that house has an instinctive knowing, understanding of vibration, and that this all is vibration.
Right.
It's learned, it'll look at a solid piece of wood and know that, no, actually it's a lot of atoms revolving around each other and there's a force holding it together. But in terms of past lives, virtually everybody that I've known or worked with Uranus in the 12th has memories of being in a revolution, an upheaval, or Atlantis. And if we do a regression to past lives, those things will come up. So it's like bringing in new thought, new energy, or being in upheaval, earthquake, anything like that, which has been part of the learning that not everything is solid and stable, but also being a catalyst. And so coming in, because this hinges as well across the top of this finger of fate with Chiron on the other side. Chiron is the wounded healer planet, so you're healing wounds to the self. And then when that's done, you can then integrate everything, the old wisdom, the knowledge, and then you communicate it. So it's very much the chart of somebody who had a plan, a definite plan. Some people come in, it's a bit nebulous.
Right.
Other people come in and there is a plan. And this very much, especially with, you've got this Leo up on this midheaven, what you're reaching for is fame, fortune, and being known, Sun in Leo, natural entertainer, king of the pack, leader of the pack. So it's like, of course you were an entrepreneur. Of course you did that, and you satisfied that need to do that. But now it's like take it to a different level and do it for humanity, which is very different to just doing it to make money, of course.
You're right. Doing it for ego gratification or any of those things, which when I was younger excited me a lot more for those reasons. And now it doesn't do it for me the same way, right? The most rewarding thing that I've ever done is this show and getting the feedback that I get and being able to affect others' lives in a way that is really making a difference in a ROI ripple of impact. That is where it's at. And I certainly resonate with everything that you said. I mean, I wrote a song many years ago about, having master plans, right? And always having plans my whole life. And you'd mentioned, learning to just be. And my initials are BBB. So I'm pretty sure that was a message that I wanted to get, right? So I definitely resonate with all of that. Super cool.
Well, I think the idea of doing a wider audience, Jupiter, which it rules Sagittarius anyway, so it rules your moon and your north node. It's now in Sagittarius, expanding things.
Yeah.
Jupiter can go way over the top, so you have to kind of have the Saturn discipline as well. But it's coming up to your north node, and that's a whole new cycle opening up of really putting your soul purpose out there. So it looks like you're well on track to express this stuff.
Oh, well, that's exciting to know, especially considering as we record this, this will come out in a few weeks, but as we record this in 2 days, I'm going to. It's a Wednesday. On Friday, I anticipate sort of having my definitive answer on this new show happening. So it's very timely to have this conversation because it's right around the corner that, and I anticipate it being sort of solidified as far as the arrangements being made around it. A lot of moving parts, but that's exciting for me to hear and inspiring to hear at this moment for sure.
Well, that's perfect because we don't need to look at the lessons from past lives. We just look at how it's all come together at this moment. But if you were someone who had some really heavy karma going on now, or heavy things going on now, where past life therapy comes in is we actually go back to that past life and change it.
Interesting.
That is what I really find so rewarding in this kind of work. We are not stuck with something that was written in stone. We have so many possibilities. The Akashic Record has all the possibilities that could have, did, might have, all the different timelines. And you can go back into a past life and you can heal something. Or you can change how it works. Or the thing that happens most is making a vow or a promise or a contract that is no longer relevant but is still holding you.
Right.
One of my favorite examples of this, it's the one that always comes to mind. I had somebody on a workshop years ago and she said, I so want to have a baby. But, it's a big but. My sister's an alcoholic. I'm looking after her. She lives with me and my husband. I can't have a baby around this. So we went back and we found that at the end of the previous life, she'd said to her sister, don't worry, I'll always look after you. Well, always is a very long time. So we changed that. And we said, we'll look after you for that life. And in the next one, you will be responsible for yourself.
Wow.
So we did that. And she explained to her sister that things were going to be different from now on, and she went home and told her sister what had happened. And her sister went into a unit for recovery and actually got over her 20-year alcoholism, because this was somebody wanting the baby for whom, she was in her 40s. Time was running out.
Right.
She'd been looking after her sister for 20 years.
Right.
So the sister went into recovery. I haven't heard from them lately, but as far as I know, everything's still fine. And literally a month later, I got an email saying, I'm pregnant.
Wow.
And she had the baby.
Wow.
And that just, it's like, whoa, yes,
You're doing good work. All right. Wow. Funny enough, synchronistically enough, I had on one of my recent soul shares, biologist turned NLP intuitive. He's the creator of something called energetic NLP. And on that,
Art.
Art. Yes. You know Art.
Art came over and we did a tour of our local sacred
How
site.
perfect. Yes, that's so great. You know him. Yeah, Art Geyser. Yeah, he was on episode 868 for any of you who are interested. And during that, interestingly enough, we did, Judy, we did a whole thing towards the end where we rewrote contracts, released old contracts, and solidified contracts. In that whichever was most appropriate with our miraculous self, as he talks about in that episode 868. And what was so interesting is I had been having all these dreams of an ex-partner, and like a lot, and then all of a sudden. We did these release old contracts and things, and an hour after we did it and we hung up the off the call, I knocked over something of hers that I still owned, and it shattered on the floor. And it's been years since we split, and here an hour later that shattered, and then a few days later she goes public with her first relationship since us. And so I thought, wow, I had 3 dreams leading up to this. We did this releasing old contracts, which I definitely feel like we had. There's timelines where we had a contract that we would work it out or whatever. And then, I break this item of hers, and then, she comes public with a new relationship. And I'm like, wow, this is real,
It's wonderful. Arthur and I met at the College of Psychic Studies, and he's one of those people that it was like we'd known each other forever.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Just talk without having to explain ourselves.
Yeah.
And we worked very, very similarly.
Yeah, I sense that. There is a similarity. Like, you both have this very sweet, easy way about you that is, there's a similarity, I feel, for sure.
And I was doing the work with crystals, he was doing it with NLP, but it was so similar, the way that we did it. I mean, it really shows, that there is a connectedness between souls. I mean, he's on the far coast of America, and then I'm here, and then there's somebody else that's in Canada, somebody in Australia, somebody in New Zealand. We're all doing this work, and we get together at times, but we don't need to be together for this kind of work to work. You know what I mean?
Well, look, here we are connecting, and you're in the, UK, and I'm in the US. And, one of the things he said to me at the beginning of our, my soul share or interview with him was, by the way, I'm doing some energetic clearing in regards to you and I's past lives together, where we have definitely some karmic history there. And then he went on to tell me, and it's the first time anyone's ever kind of said that to me, when I have him on. And then he's like, and by the way, you have about 20% of your guests you have significant karmic ties with, and others there's a lesser degree. But I thought that was a really interesting, intuitive share he made. Yeah,
I find that people who come to my workshops, people who ask for readings, there is a connection. And when you're doing astrology, what always fascinates me is how you're dealing with something yourself, a relationship breakup or some remnants of a relationship, or, whatever it is, I will get 6 readings in a row that focus on exactly that same thing. That's how I find the answers, is by doing the readings for other people, or I'm able to say, not necessarily to them, but, in my head, I'm going, oh, yeah, I've worked through that. I know that
right.
one. And to go from there. And it's like an energetic magnet that brings the right people together at the right time. I find with readings, sometimes it takes 3 months. At the moment, I've got several readings that have been here for a while because I had a virus wipe my computer out and had to start again. Then I got a virus when I came back from Egypt and pretty much got wiped out. And so I'm just beginning to do the readings again now. And when I look at the transits on those readings, this is the time, not 3 months ago when the readings came in. And I even had one that I did 3 months ago that came back in the post, because I do them on tape, the only thing that I can function on to record something, good old-fashioned tape. But that reading came back to me after 3 months. It came back from Germany when it had been sent to Austria. And I emailed the person, and the email bounced back, and I thought, well, what do I do now? I've got her reading. Anyway, she emailed me. 2 days later, she emailed me and said, I don't want to push you, but I just wondered when my reading was coming. I said, well,
how about now?
It went off to you 3 months ago. It's come back. And it went back exactly the same address. Her email was still the same. And she got it 2 days later and said, perfect timing. So I never worry now about having readings for... I always need them for a month or so to tune in and to work with them. And I did another one where the person's chart had been sitting with crystals on it for 2 months.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden it was, I can take those crystals off and send them to her now. Now I can do the reading. But I couldn't touch it up until then. So
interesting.
I think that's, it's a function of age and having been around for so long. But I trust the timing. And if I sit down and look at something and think, nope, not the right timing, then I don't do it.
Wow. That's really fascinating. As you sort of tap into your own intuitive knowledge, and I think that's a great example of trusting that quote unquote setbacks are never really setbacks, right? It's like everything happens in divine timing, especially when you trust the process and the things that apparently are out of your control, and say, oh, okay, this is happening for me, not to me, and let's roll with it.
And I love art's miraculous self. I use higher self. But I think his miraculous self, actually, I'd want to adopt that. I said to him, I want to adopt that. I like
it's
that,
pretty
that
cool.
Word. But that's what I'm talking to when I'm doing or that's where I'm tuning in when I'm doing a reading. I'm not tuning in to the person who's actually in the physical body walking on the earth. I'm talking to a part of that person that is not restricted or limited by the earth view. And that really helps. Because we are blinkered when we're down here in the physical body. As soon as you get out of your physical body, you realize there is no time. There really isn't any karma. There's just this ripple of cause and effect that you can short circuit or change or do whatever.
That's got to be so inspiring to people who feel that they have created negative karma prior to having more of an expanded perspective on the oneness of all things. And you know what I mean? Like what great relief to hear there's a path to change the past, essentially, right?
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
And that's something that people a lot of times I don't think have realized, like the same way you can change the future because there is no time, you can change the past by sort of resonating. Would you say it's by resonating with an alternate timeline where things were more advantageous karmically speaking?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good way of pushing it. And the other thing that comes up time and time again is that people, what appears to be a negative experience, people actually programmed in order to learn how it felt. And then later on they would use what they'd learnt. I don't know, have you ever interviewed Robert Schwartz?
No, I have not.
Oh, he's definitely one you should talk to. He's
Robert Schwartz, you said?
Yes. He wrote, he's written, well, he retitled one and then he wrote another one about soul intention. And what he says is, if you want to learn compassion, you will very often have a life where you are shown absolutely no compassion at all initially. You develop compassion for yourself, and then you go out and share it with others. And he had someone investigate. He didn't know about karmic astrology at the time, which I think was a great pity, because it would have been so interesting to look at the charts of the people that he had someone else. He didn't regress them. He had someone else read their past lives and go to the planning meeting, to the interlife stage where you plan the incarnation that you're coming into. And people read that and then came and said, well, this is what you were here to learn. And it really resonated with me. He was visiting England, and in typical American fashion, 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and he came to stay overnight on his way somewhere else, and we had a very hasty conversation. But it was just like talking to art. Robert had found all these things, was looking then at ways of helping short-circuiting the process of getting that wisdom, learning that skill or quality that the person was looking for. And I think his work's developed since then. But I haven't seen him for a few years, but I know he's written more books, and I still get his newsletter because it's fascinating just to see what he thinks. The latest one's all about what President Trump is doing for the world, and it's a very different view. Trump is acting in a certain way because it will bring about something else. Right.
He's playing his part, and
that. So I always keep up with his newsletter for that reason. But do get him on. You would find
I've already messaged. I just messaged my booking manager already. Like, go get him. So, thank you for that suggestion. Very, very cool. Wow, this has been absolutely amazing, Judy. As we kind of wind down here, I would like to get, one of the things I love to hear is a story of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal story. And I have a feeling we could do a whole episode on those with you. But if you have one or two that, bubbles up for you that would be, you think would be fun to share, we'd love to hear it.
There are many, and it's a question of retrieving them from the morass of my mind.
Right.
But, right now I cannot think of anything that's coming up, and yet there are so many where things have just happened. I mean, but perhaps, we talked about art. Let's go to art.
Okay, great.
My first meeting with art. This, to me, is absolute serendipity. Because I'd heard about him, I have friends who had trained with him. I had booked to see art at the College of Psychic Studies for a session to find out what this man was all about.
Sure.
I put the wrong date in my diary. So I arrived at the college the day that art had just arrived from America. And they said, you're a day early. I went upstairs to the kitchen, I think, and there was Art. And person I was with said, "Oh, you know, so this is Art. Oh, Judy's here. She's here a day early. She's supposed to see you tomorrow." And Art said, "I've got space."
Oh, wonderful.
In his inimitable fashion, he said, "Just let me finish ironing my shirt, and then I'll be with you." And we did that, and we went out, actually had some supper. I went home. The next day, the trains weren't running, so I couldn't have gone.
Oh, wow.
And I live an hour and a half away from London, and I would have had no way of getting to my appointment with Art had I not gone a day early, but also had the person he was due to meet that evening not been able to meet with him.
Wow, that's it's really fascinating. Once again, something that you think is a mistake actually is happening for you, right? And it really, the question is, it's always how long between that realization comes is what I found. And that realization may not even come until after you sort of leave this life and can see from a zoomed out view a bigger narrative that's unfolding. But I think if we can move into that state of knowing like, okay, I just got stuck in traffic, but maybe that stopped me from an accident down the road that I'll never know about because of it. You know, and I feel like it brings so much peace to these sort of mix-ups.
I always find myself, if I get lost, which happens occasionally, I always look at what have I missed, what have I avoided,
or gained
because of that. Because I know from past experience that if I'd left 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, or hadn't got lost, then I would have been in the middle of something. And so, and meeting people, you know, you just happen to be there and you meet someone. Or a book. My very first meeting with Christine Hartley, who was a very old lady and was the Western mystery tradition high priestess in England. I went into the library. I was having lots of past life, spontaneous past life visions, and I really didn't know what to make of them. And I walked into the library to see a friend of mine who we were sitting in a spiritualist circle together to develop mediumship, and the leader of the circle didn't believe in past lives, so you can imagine I was having a tough time. And I went in to see Audrey and said, I've had another one, you know, it's so real. And this book literally came off the shelf and hit me on the head. And the book was called A Case for Reincarnation. Wow.
And it just fell off the shelf.
I took it, it flew off the shelf. Boom, right on my head.
Wow.
Picked it up. Audrey said, "There's your answer." Took it home, read it, wrote to Christine. Within 2 or 3 weeks, I was meeting her, not a person that, you know, I've known you forever. It really made me laugh. We met in Portsmouth in a cafe. I was on the Isle of Wight at the time, and she lived close to Portsmouth. And we sat there having a cup of coffee, and she said to me, "You know, dear, over the centuries, we've sat like this together so often." And this waitress dropped a coffee cup because she overheard her.
She's like, "Are these vampires?" It's daytime. I'm safe.
You know. So that was great. You know,
that's so cool. So cool. You know, I've been having a lot of people in my circle, you know, share with me stories of having spontaneous past life, parallel live kind of experiences where they're actually, you know, there as much as they are here in those moments. And one I've shared a bunch of times on the show recently because it's just so fascinating is a friend of mine who was sitting at the piano recently, and she doesn't play piano. And all of a sudden, she saw a ring on the piano, and it triggered a past life connection to the 1800s, and a woman who was sitting at the piano, who was her, playing the piano and crying because she was sad her husband had left or something. And she said she was so tuned into that person, then she was actually playing the piano here and now, even though she doesn't know the piano, she was able to play the same song.
Yeah, I had somebody who got up and painted in the night after a dream like this, a dream in quotes. She'd always wanted to paint. She'd got the materials there, but every time she tried, she couldn't do it. She had this experience of going back to being a painter, and the paintings that she did were just amazing.
Wow.
And then somebody said to her, that's not possible, and she couldn't do it anymore.
Wow. And she was able to recreate and actually paint like someone who was a skilled, masterful painter.
Yeah.
Wow.
The particular painter. I mean, and it wasn't that she'd studied that painter's paintings, so she wasn't copying them.
Well, even if you could study them, like, if she hadn't had any experience in this life, what's the likelihood of being able to recreate, something that you're looking at?
It would not have. It was amazing. But it shows. I had the same experience when I first used tarot cards. I could just read them. I knew what they meant. Nobody taught me. And then somebody came to the house and said, they're wicked, they're evil, they're wrong, you mustn't do that, you can't do that, you'll be taken over by this. This is many, many years ago. And after that, I couldn't do tarot.
Wow.
I didn't do tarot for probably 50 years, and then the other day, I couldn't go home from being in London because there was a train strike. So I booked onto a tarot workshop at the college with someone I know. And I said, well, I'm here, and I know this is like you're well through your course, but I've just come along to enjoy being with Avril, blah, 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 And then I picked up the cards and proceeded to read for 3 people.
Wow.
And it all came back, just in that moment.
Wow.
I haven't tried since, but just after that, talking about synchronicities, somebody emailed me and said they were doing a project, a tarot, and would I please be photographed to be the Queen of Cups?
Oh, wow.
Because it had been that card had been pulled out for me. And I really don't like being photographed. I'm not comfortable being photographed. I prefer to have a crystal or something with me, But I said yes straight away. And when I read the Queen of Cups, it really resonated. So, that was tarot.
I'd be interesting to see what you are. Have you ever looked up your destiny cards? Are you familiar with destiny cards?
I probably have. I did a book on various things, but I did all these things so long ago. I think I've used pretty much every pack there is, to try it out for the book,
Destiny card supposedly predates tarot, and what's interesting, it's based off of, using astrology but tying it into the 52 playing cards. And what's interesting is, you've got 52 weeks in a year, you've got 52 cards, you've got 4 suits, you've got 4 seasons, you've got, if you add up all the cards and give the Joker, count that for a quarter, then you get 365 in a quarter, just like days in a year. And when you said Queen of Cups, I'm a King of Hearts in Destiny cards, so I'd be curious. It makes me want to look up what your card is, actually.
Oh, that would be really interesting.
Yeah. What is your birthday?
It's the 25th of November, 1943. Do you have
21st of November
to look up, or do I have to wait?
Okay, so I just grabbed my book here, and this is by Sharon Jeffers. It's called Cards of Destiny, and get this. I just told you I'm a King of Hearts. You were just telling us about your Queen of Cups, right? Guess what you are? Guess what you are in Destiny cards? I'm a king of hearts. You're a queen of hearts.
Oh.
So we're another queen, right? Isn't that so cool? Wow. Let me look at this real quick.
I was going to say, what does it say?
Yeah. So, the Queen of Hearts is the promoter of dreams, and if this is your birth card, you hold the vision of love and harmony for the whole world to see. This is a card of beauty, magnetism, love, and affection. The positive qualities of this card are like a fairy tale come true. A perfect human being who is loving, caring, and compassionate. Being the Queen of Hearts, you are inviting and warm, friendly, and optimistic, and artistically gifted. Some of you are dramatic and moody. All of you make wonderful friends and lovers when operating with the positive aspects of this card. And then it kind of goes on from there. I'll send you pictures of it. So how
really
cool is that? Yeah.
That is one side of me, and the Queen of Cups is the other.
Yeah, how beautiful and how cool is that?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, well, this has been absolutely lovely to connect with another heart-centered, hearts being the most heart-centered in the deck. And you have, different clubs have one thing, diamonds another, spades sort of another. So definitely connecting with another royal heart, if you will, has been so wonderful, Judy. And I thank you for taking the time. And I feel like I could go so much further with you, but maybe we'll have to have you back on again sometime. And
that'd be a pleasure.
What I'd like to do is, obviously, for anyone who's interested in connecting with you, following your work, possibly participating in one of your workshops or having a reading, what is the best way for them to do that?
To go to my website, which actually is being reconstructed, but the old website is archived. So it's archive www.judyhall.co.uk.
Got it.
And that's
judyhall.co.uk.
Absolutely huge crystal resource. But
Wonderful.
I've just had a thought that fits in with your Queen of Hearts. The next book I've got coming out in May is, two books. One's called The Alchemy of Night, and that was a novel that was pretty much dictated to me. The other one is The Sacred Sexual Practices of Ancient Egypt, which is the manual that goes with a novel that was dictated to me by someone who will be featured in one of the next books in the series. Actually, although it's about sacred sexuality, it's about then using that energy to manifest and to change life. Many years ago, I went to a talk that Murray Hope gave at the College of Psychic Studies about sacred marriage in ancient Egypt. And she'd been given on a train a papyrus with 8 of the 10 steps. The end was torn off. This man had just handed it to her and said, "I think you need this, dear." She was about 20 at the time. And she was an Egyptologist, went away, translated it, gave this talk. And so I always knew that there was a purpose, that you could do sacred marriage as opposed to the level of the physical. But the ultimate end of the book was lost. The book, the manual that was dictated to me, the end was lost, but we recreated it. And so that really would be interesting to talk about.
That sounds absolutely fascinating.
Oh, it's fascinating having an ancient Egyptian pharaoh appear in your bedroom.
Yeah. What? Wow.
Very physical.
So you had a pharaoh actually appear to kind of give you the ending of those scrolls, is what you're saying.
First of all, he was giving me the dreams, which became the novel.
Right.
And then this guy, Pascal Beverly Randolph, who was a black American magician in the 19th century, dictated the book. But he hadn't got the end. And so the pharaoh came back and said, but a bit's missing. And that was it.
Wow.
We were into, this is what it's really about. Once you it's like focused the energy. I was going to say tamed the energy, but that's not the word. It's more like focused it and gone through all the stages. And you either do it alone or you do it with a partner. Then what do you do with the energy?
Right.
So that was fascinating.
Wow. What a
we
incredible.
can talk about that next time. So I love that Queen of Hearts because that's a really good indication for those books.
Wow.
And for sacred sexuality and the spread of love.
Wow. That sounds like, all of your books sound like such a wonderful adventure with so much knowledge and wisdom. And I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few people that are going to be wanting to order multiple of your books. And when are those coming out? Those new ones?
May, those two will be out in May.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Everything except those is listed on my website. And you can also catch up with me on Crystal Judy Hall Facebook or the Crystal Bible Facebook. Gotcha.
Well, I do have one last question here for you, Judy, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Judy Hall?
Well, after that Queen of Hearts, I think what I was told a long time ago just sums it up: to love and be loved and take joy in the loving.
I love that. Such a wonderful answer from such a wonderful Queen of Hearts. Thank you so much, Judy. This has been absolutely an honor and a pleasure.
It's been great. I really enjoyed it. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. Before we sign off, I wanted to let you all know that we have finally created the Game with the Universe on our website, where you can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time by doing this manually. But now, if you go to positivehead.com/YO Universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and grandest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to engage and invite friends, family, people on social media to check out the podcast as well. So be sure to check out positivehead.com/YOUNIVERSE and be sure to tell all your friends so they can play a game with the universe, which also helps the show to reach new people, which I greatly appreciate. And as a quick reminder, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them every day. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I can't stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so, and I'm sincerely excited to share it with all of you. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.